She said she favored decriminalizing illegal border crossing. She even suggested she would be in favor of abolishing ICE. Now, of course, she's taking, at least rhetorically, a much tougher line on border security. Take a look at this, one of her very first ads as the presidential nominee.
Kamala Harris has spent decades fighting violent crime. As a border state prosecutor, she took on drug cartels and jailed gang members for smuggling weapons and drugs across the border. As vice president, she backed the toughest border control bill in decades. And as president, she will hire thousands more border agents and crack down on fentanyl and human trafficking. Fixing the border is tough. So is Kamala Harris.
What do you make of her transformation on this issue?
Well, I don't think it's a question of transformation. We have a crisis at the border, and we've got to make sure the fentanyl does not get into this country. We have to crack down on illegal immigration. But what we need is comprehensive immigration reform. I mean, you got God knows how many young people in this country as a result of DACA who deserve to gain citizenship. We need skilled workers, and we need workers in this country. A lot of labor shortages all over America where immigrants can play an important role. So keeping people from illegally entering the country obviously is the right thing to do. But we need comprehensive immigration reform, and I suspect that is what the vice president supports.
But if you take a look at that ad, one thing that I found striking is if you look, and I think we have the images here, there are at least 3 points in that ad that show the border wall, Donald Trump's border wall. Is it now the position of the Democrats that they favor the border wall?
Well, you can ask the Harris campaign about that ad. That's the first that I've seen it.
Vice President Kamala Harris is flip-flopping on the border. That's the headline of an Axios story that blew up online. If elected, Harris has vowed to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on building a wall along the southern border. I wonder where she got that idea. The wall was something she once called, quote, un-American when Trump was in office. She also called the wall a vanity project for Trump. Let's watch.
This issue is about a vanity project for this president.
Right.
And it is a problem of his own making.
Right.
And listen, when I travel this country, folks have plenty enough problems that they need their president to focus on.
You know what?
Instead of a wall that, by the way, because I was a prosecutor for many years, including the Attorney General of California, I specialize on transnational criminal organizations.
Yeah.
That wall ain't gonna stop them.
No.
And here's another example from her 2019 CNN town hall. Let's watch.
This administration has decided to vilify them and to trade on them for the sake of this president's medieval vanity project called a wall. Let me be very clear. I'm not going to vote for a wall under any circumstances, and I do support border security. And if we want to talk about that, let's do that.
The Harris campaign putting out an ad claiming the wall as their own? Now, surely they would never do something like that, right? And Kamala Harris wouldn't go out and copy policies from the Trump campaign because she doesn't have any policies of her own that people actually like, right? Just like how she copied Donald Trump's no tax on tips policy. Now, you know it's bad when even ABC News is taking shots at your ad. The sole network where Harris agreed to a debate. And by the way, guys, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for hitting the like button. Thank you for subscribing and sharing this video. You guys are awesome. And it's also bad when you're calling out your own administration for failing at the border. And residents within the area are so frustrated because they blame Harris for these failures. One resident from Yuma gave Kamala Harris a 0 out of 10 as the border czar and argued that people come across to our country with no problems. And no matter how they want to spin this narrative, Kamala Harris was placed as the border czar. She was supposed to be solving or at least be working on key issues of illegal immigration from other countries. She was called the border czar by multiple different news outlets, which now brings me to NBC News, where KRISTEN Welker tried to bait JD Vance into saying what she wanted to hear. Mainstream liberal media is just trying to paint both Donald Trump and JD Vance as heartless individuals who want to deport millions of illegal immigrants. Something that they're failing to do given how these guys are answering with the truth.
There has been a lot of discussion about Donald Trump's plans for mass deportation. Yeah. According to one estimate, more than 11 million U.S. citizens live in households with mixed immigration status, including more than 5 million children. If you and former President Trump were elected, would you separate families as a part of your mass deportation effort?
Well, we have to start with the foundational issue here, which is we have 25 million illegal aliens in this country right now because Kamala Harris has refused to do her job.
I have to, very quickly, DHS says it's much lower. It's closer to 8 million.
I
don't know. Where do you get the 25 million from?
Well, I think the 25 million are the people that should have been deported that maybe weren't deported, plus you had another 12 to 15 million that have come in since Kamala Harris. Look,
DHS
whatever the number
disputes
is,
that number for the record. They say it's
fair,
closer to 8 to 10 million.
But I think there are
please
reasons
continue.
to think that DHS is underestimating. Whatever the real number is, it's way too high, right? It's millions upon millions of illegal immigrants that have come in just since Kamala Harris became the border czar a few years ago.
She was put in charge of the root causes of migration. Go ahead.
Well, the root causes of migration, I would say, Kristen, is that Kamala Harris refuses to do her job as border czar. And let's just start there. I want to answer your question, but I think it's important to sort of sequence this in the right way. So if you want to get control of the illegal immigration problem, you have to stop the bleeding. You have to stop so many people from coming here illegally in the first place. And that means undoing everything that Kamala Harris did practically on day one of the administration. You have to reimpose deportations. You have to stop catch and release. Stop granting asylum to every single person who comes in here and says that they need asylum, and stop granting mass parole. These policies are why we have the immigration crisis that we have. So I think focus on fixing the problem. Before we even fix the problem, we've got to stop the problem from getting worse.
So instead of focusing on key issues of the problem, they would rather just talk about the tip of the iceberg, just the tip. It's also kind of funny how they say that illegal entries have not gone up by 25 million, as if 8 million was a small number. Within a short period, the Biden-Harris administration has more than doubled the number of illegal aliens residing in our country. And you got to admire JD Vance here for a second. He's coming into unfriendly territory and answering tough questions from journalists. Journalists who clearly have their own objectives. When was the last time Harris did anything like this? As of now, they're doing tough interviews with JD Vance and they're asking all these leading questions. The problem is that it's not working. The American people are aware of what happened during the Harris-Biden term. And here's what happens when liberal media is confronted with facts.
Under the Trump administration, there was a zero tolerance policy, which is an actual policy. But let's move on.
No, please,
because we're running
just
out
make
of
this point,
time.
Kristen, because this is so important.
We are running out of time.
There was a
Senator.
zero, I'll give you more time. There was a zero
Okay.
tolerance policy during the Trump administration, and that led to less family separation than under Kamala Harris's border policies. That's what's so striking about this. Actually enforcing our border is the most humane thing for children and certainly for American citizens.
But I don't hear you denying that families will be separated. Let's move on.
Now, I just love the part where JD Vance was willing to give her even more time because he wanted to get the facts straight. And then, of course, she suddenly wanted to move on. That's weird, right? What do you say about Welker here? Did she do her job as a journalist? I felt like she was more of an attorney. Like, she was trying to prove a point, not interview or get legitimate information and facts. And since we're talking about mainstream media, I want to direct you guys to a previous video I did that shows just how differently they treated Donald Trump back in the day. They turn on him something fierce, and it's worth your time to check it out, guys. Now, as always, I appreciate you guys being here, and I'll definitely see you guys on the next one.